The bar on Station Omega-9 was filled with smoke and the smell of a dozen different alien drinks. In the corner booth, 3 traders from different worlds were sharing stories over their third round. This was how it always started, how legends spread across the galaxy. One story, one drink, one night at a time. You ever hear about the humans? Asked Kelv, a blue-skinned Tarvian with 4 arms. His friends leaned in close, interested despite themselves. Fairy tales, laughed Morg, a massive Hruk trader. Stories to scare young ones. Next you'll tell me about the ghost ships that appear from nowhere. But Kelv shook his head slowly. My grandfather told me his grandfather saw them once. Said they were tall, only 2 arms, walked on 2 legs. Wore armor that shined like stars. They came to a dying colony, saved everyone, then disappeared. Never asked for payment or thanks. Just left. The third trader, a female Zephian named Lyra, waved her tentacles in dismissal. The council searched that whole sector 50 years ago. Found nothing. If humans ever existed, they're dead now. Gone for centuries. Across the galaxy in the tall towers of the council homeworld, Ambassador Kelnara was saying almost the same thing. She stood before the Grand Assembly, her transparent body shifting colors as she spoke. Around her sat representatives from 47 different species, the most powerful beings in known space. The explorers want funding to search for humans, she announced, and the chamber filled with clicking, chirping laughter. They believe the old legends. They think somewhere out in the dark humanity still exists. Commander Vexthor of the Krillian Empire rose from his seat. His 4 eyes gleamed with amusement. Let them waste their money. I have studied the old records. That sector is empty. Dead stars and frozen rocks. Nothing lives there. Nothing could live there. Then we agree, Kelnara said. The motion is denied. The council has better uses for its resources than chasing myths. But on the very edge of known space, on a tiny mining station that barely showed up on star maps, an old miner was making a discovery that would change everything. His name was Court, and he was a Telvanni, a species known for living long and remembering longer. Court's scanner beeped as he worked through an asteroid field. The rock he pulled into his ship's hold looked ordinary enough, just another chunk of stone and metal. But when he cut it open, something inside caught the light. It was a plate of metal, smooth and unmarked by time. On it were symbols that Court's translator couldn't read. He had seen 1,000 languages in his long life, but never these shapes. They were precise, mathematical, beautiful in their simplicity. He took pictures and sent them to every database he could access. Nothing matched. Finally, he sent them to a linguistics professor on the council homeworld, an expert in dead languages. The response came back 3 days later, and Court's 3 hearts all skipped a beat when he read it. These symbols are ancient. They match fragments found in prohibited archives. The translation is uncertain, but the message reads something like, Earth remembers. Earth endures. Court looked at the metal plate again with new eyes. Earth. He knew that word. Every old spacer knew it. Earth was the homeworld of humans, the mythical species that supposedly vanished 200 years ago. But myths didn't leave metal plates in asteroids. Myths didn't endure. Far beyond the edge of council space, past the mapped stars and into the region called the Silent Zone, something was happening. On a dark planet that orbited no sun, hidden beneath miles of rock and ice, lights were turning on. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHSF Valiant and watched those lights flicker to life on his screens. His ship hung in space above the hidden base, one of 7 warships that had been sleeping in the dark for decades. Sir, the message has been decoded, said Lieutenant Kate Fisher. She was young, only 25, but her family had served in the fleet for 5 generations. It's from the colony ship Destiny, the one that left Earth 203 years ago. Jake felt his chest tighten. Everyone knew the story of the Destiny. It was part of their history, taught to every child. The Destiny had been humanity's first attempt to reach beyond their hidden sector, to find new worlds. It never came back. Play it, he ordered. The message was old and damaged, but the voice was clear. A woman's voice, calm despite the fear underneath. This is Captain Helen Grant of the colony ship Destiny. We are under attack by unknown vessels. They appeared without warning and opened fire. We have civilian families on board. We are not a military ship. We are trying to escape, but they are faster. If anyone receives this, please know we tried. We tried to find a new home. We tried to build something better. The message ended with the sound of explosions and screaming, then static. The bridge was silent. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same expression on every face. Anger. After 200 years, humanity finally had proof of what had happened. They had always suspected, but now they knew. Someone had attacked their colony ship. Someone had killed their people. Lieutenant Fisher, plot a course to the coordinates in that message, Jake said quietly. We're going to find out what happened. And we're going to find out who did it. Sir, that will take us into council space, Fisher replied. We'll be violating every protocol. If they detect us, it could start a war. Jake looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness that humanity had hidden in for 2 centuries. His people had lived in fear, in secret, always watching, always waiting. They had built these ships in silence, trained their crews in shadows, prepared for a day they hoped would never come. We've been hiding long enough, he said. It's time the galaxy learned that humans aren't extinct. And it's time we got some answers. Behind the Valiant, 6 other warships began to power up their engines. Their hulls were black as night, designed to absorb sensor sweeps. Their weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever seen, built from principles of physics that humanity had discovered in their long isolation. In the cargo bay of each ship, soldiers checked their equipment. In the medical bays, doctors prepared for casualties. In the engine rooms, engineers made sure every system was perfect. They all knew what this mission meant. They were going back into the galaxy that had tried to kill them. On Earth, hidden behind shields that made the whole star system invisible, billions of people waited for news. They lived on a world that most of the galaxy thought was empty, in cities built underground and in deep oceans. They had survived the long night, and now they wanted justice. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the dark planet behind. They were heading toward the coordinates where the destiny had died. They were heading toward answers. And whether the Council knew it or not, they were heading toward the beginning of a new age. In bars across 1,000 worlds, old traders would keep telling stories about humans. But soon, very soon, those stories would stop being myths. The galaxy was about to learn that some legends are real, and some ghosts come back with fire in their eyes. The trade station Epsilon 7 floated in neutral space, far from any government's control. It was a place where deals were made in shadows and questions weren't asked. Merchants from across the galaxy came here to buy and sell things that might not be strictly legal elsewhere. The station master, a massive Vraxian named Kolth, had seen just about everything in his 40 years running the place. That's what he thought. Anyway, until the small shuttle docked in Bay 42, the ship was strange. Kolth had seen thousands of different designs over the years, but this one didn't match anything in his database. It was smooth and dark, with lines that seemed more grown than built. When he ran a scan, the results came back confused. The hull material wasn't in any registry. The being who stepped out wore a full environmental suit head to toe. Not unusual. Plenty of species needed special atmospheres. The suit was simple, gray with a dark helmet that hid the face completely. Welcome to Epsilon 7, Kolth rumbled in standard Galactic, the trade language everyone used. State your business and world of origin. The suited figure's voice came through a translator box on the chest. It was flat, mechanical, hiding any trace of the real voice underneath. I'm here to trade and gather information. I represent Earth. Kolth's computer drew a blank. No record of that world. You from an independent colony? New settlement? Something like that, the figure replied. My name is Dan Cole. I have refined metals to sell. Rare elements. And I'm looking for historical records, if you have any for sale. Over the next 3 days, Dan Cole became a regular sight on Epsilon 7. He visited the trading floors, bought information chips from data merchants, and spent hours in the station's public archives. He asked questions about the Council, about the history of the sector, about events from 200 years ago. The merchants who dealt with him found him odd but profitable. The metals he sold were incredibly pure, refined beyond anything they'd seen. The prices he paid were fair, and he never argued or bargained. He just wanted information. In a dark corner bar on the third night, Dan sat alone at a table listening. 3 tables over, a group of Krillian traders were drinking and talking loudly. The old sectors are the best for salvage, one was saying. Empty space, forgotten battles. My crew found a debris field out past the rim last month. Old ships must have been there 200 years or more. What kind of ships? Another asked. The first Krillian laughed. Who knows? They were blasted to pieces, but the metal was good. We pulled enough scrap to pay for 3 months of operation. Dan's helmet never turned toward them, but he was listening to every word. His right hand, hidden under the table, was recording everything on a small device. On the 4th day, a Krillian patrol ship arrived at Epsilon 7. This wasn't unusual. Patrols came through every few weeks, checking for contraband and making sure everyone knew the Empire's reach was long. Commander Zekthar of the patrol ship demanded to inspect all recent arrivals. It was standard procedure, but something about the strange shuttle in Bay 42 bothered him. His sensors couldn't get a good reading on it, and that made him suspicious. "Open Bay 42, he ordered Kolth. "I want to inspect that vessel personally." Kolth shrugged his massive shoulders. "Your authority, Commander. But the owner paid his docking fees. He's entitled to privacy." "Not from Imperial inspection, he isn't. But when they opened the bay, it was empty. The shuttle was gone." Kolth checked his monitors in confusion. The bay doors hadn't opened. The launch sensors showed no departure. The ship had simply vanished. "How is this possible?" Zekthar demanded. "Your station is broken. Your security is worthless." Kolth examined the bay himself, his small eyes narrowing. On the wall, near where the shuttle had been parked, someone had carved words into the metal. The letters were precise, cut with something incredibly sharp. The message was in perfect galactic script. "We are watching. We are waiting. We are coming." Zekthar stared at the words and felt a chill run down his spine. "Who was the pilot? What species?" "Never saw his face," Kolth said slowly. "Never heard his real voice. He said he was from Earth." The Vraxian paused. "That's a human world, isn't it? From the old myths?" "Myths don't carve warnings into walls," Zekthar said quietly. "Myths don't disappear from locked bays. Send a report to Imperial Command. Tell them something strange is happening in this sector." Thousands of light years away, Captain Jake Morrison's fleet had reached the coordinates from the Destiny's distress call. What they found made every person on every ship go silent. The debris field stretched as far as their sensors could reach. Hundreds of thousands of pieces, from chunks as big as buildings to fragments smaller than a hand. And all of it was human. Ship parts, hull plating, personal effects. The scattered remains of dozens of vessels. This wasn't one ship, Lieutenant Kate Fisher said, her voice shaking slightly. "Sir, there are at least 30 different ship signatures here. Maybe more." Jake felt sick. The Destiny hadn't been alone when it died. Somehow other human ships had been here. Other colony expeditions, other exploration missions. All destroyed. All dead. "Deploy recovery drones," he ordered. "I want every data core, every black box, every computer fragment we can find. Something here will tell us what happened." It took 6 hours of careful work. The drones brought back piece after piece, and the fleet's computers began the slow process of reconstructing data from damaged drives. Most of it was corrupted, lost to 2 centuries in the cold of space. But some fragments survived. Kate brought the results to Jake in his private office. Her face was pale and her hands trembled slightly as she handed him the datapad. The footage was damaged but watchable. It showed the bridge of a colony ship, people screaming and running. Through the windows, ships were visible. Military vessels, their hulls marked with symbols that made Jake's blood run cold. "Krillian Empire," Kate said. "The markings are 200 years old, but they're definitely Krillian." "Sir, this wasn't pirates or raiders. This was a military operation." Jake watched the footage again and again. The attacking ships fired without warning, without attempting communication. They targeted engines first, then life support. They were methodical, efficient, designed to leave no survivors. "They hunted us," he said softly. "The Council didn't just ignore humanity. They actively tried to exterminate us." His second-in-command, Commander Lisa Hayes, stood in the doorway. She'd been with Jake for 15 years, fought beside him in training exercises, prepared for a war they all hoped would never come. Now her face was hard as stone. "Orders, Captain?" Jake looked at the data one more time, then at the star charts showing Council space. Somewhere out there, the people responsible for this were still alive, still in power, thinking they had gotten away with murder. "We go deeper into Council space," he said. "We find proof of who gave the orders. We collect evidence. And then we make them answer for what they did. They'll detect us eventually," Lisa warned. "When they do, this becomes a shooting war." "Then we'd better make sure we have all the evidence we need before that happens," Jake replied. "Contact the other ships. Tell them what we found. Every captain needs to understand what we're doing and why." Across the fleet, the message spread. In mess halls and ready rooms, on bridges and in barracks, human men and women looked at the footage and felt the same cold anger. Their ancestors had died here, killed for the crime of wanting to explore the stars. In the wreckage, the drones found one more thing. A small emergency pod, its power cell long dead but its hull intact. Inside was a message recorded by the last survivor of one of the ships. A young woman, maybe 20, bleeding and scared. "My name is Helen Martinez," the recording said. "I'm the last one alive on the horizon. They came out of nowhere, destroyed our engines, killed everyone. I don't know why. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just looking for a new home." She coughed and blood appeared on her lips. "If anyone finds this, please tell Earth what happened. Tell them we tried. Tell them we loved them." The recording ended. Helen Martinez had died alone in the dark, 200 years ago, hoping someone would find her message. Jake made a copy of the recording and sent it back to Earth on a secure channel. The people there deserved to know. They deserved to see why the fleet was doing what it was about to do. Then he ordered the fleet to move deeper into Council space. They had ghosts to avenge and truths to uncover, and if the Council tried to stop them, they would learn that humanity had spent 200 years preparing for exactly this moment. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council lasted 14 hours. Reports kept flooding in from across the frontier, each one more disturbing than the last. Ships going dark, stations reporting strange sightings, a Zephian research vessel found drifting with its weapons disabled, and a message burned into the hull. "Stay out of the silent zone." Ambassador Kelnara stood at the center of the grand chamber, her transparent body flickering between colors that showed stress and fear. Around her, the representatives of 47 species argued and shouted, their voices mixing into chaos. "This is clearly a military threat," declared Commander Vexthor, slamming his 4 fists on his desk. "Unknown hostiles are operating in our territory. We must respond with force." "We don't even know who they are," countered a Telvanni representative. "The reports describe ships unlike anything in our databases. For all we know, this could be a new species, one we've never encountered." Vexthor's eyes gleamed. "Then we will encounter them with weapons ready. I propose sending a fleet into the silent zone, a show of force. Let these hostiles know that the Council will not tolerate threats." The vote was quick. 42 species voted yes. Only 5 voted no, and their objections were noted and ignored. The decision was made. The Council would send a fleet, the largest military force assembled in a century. Admiral Thorks of the Krillian Empire was given command. He was a veteran of a dozen campaigns, a warrior who had never lost a battle. When he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, and looked at the 300 warships under his command, he felt confident. Whatever was out there in the dark, it wouldn't stand a chance. "All ships prepare for jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "We enter the silent zone in formation. Weapons ready, shields up. If anything moves, we destroy it." The fleet jumped, vanishing from Council space in a flash of light. When they reappeared at the edge of the silent zone, they spread out in a pattern designed to sweep every cubic meter of space. Their sensors reached out, searching for the enemy. They found nothing. Empty space, dead stars, floating rocks. For 3 hours, the fleet moved deeper into the zone, finding no trace of anyone. "This is a waste of time," Thorks grumbled. "There's nothing here but ghost stories and empty threats." On the Valiant, Captain Jake Morrison watched the Council fleet on his sensors. His ship, along with 7 others, hung in space, completely invisible. Their stealth systems were so advanced that the Council ships passed within a few thousand kilometers and never detected a thing. "They're spreading out," Kate Fisher reported from her station. "If they keep this pattern, they'll be vulnerable. We could hit them before they know we're here." Jake shook his head. "No, we're not murderers. We came here for answers, and we have them. Now we give them a choice." He touched a control, and all 8 human ships deactivated their stealth fields at the same moment. On every Council sensor screen, 8 massive contacts appeared out of nowhere, their energy signatures blazing like newborn stars. Thorks nearly fell from his command throne. Where did they come from? How did they get so close? His sensor officer, a young Zephian, was checking and rechecking her displays. "Sir, I don't understand. They weren't there a second ago. It's like they appeared from nothing." "Hail them," Thorks ordered. "Demand identification." Before his communications officer could send the message, the human ships transmitted on every frequency at once. The voice that came through spoke perfect Galactic, clear and calm. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Human Space Force, speaking for Earth and her colonies. You are in our territory. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Thorx's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or anger. "Humans, so the legends are true. You should have stayed hidden, primitives. Look around you. 300 of our finest warships against 8 of yours. You're outnumbered 40-1. Surrender now and we might let you live." There was a pause before Jake's voice came back, and this time there was something in it that made Thorx's scales itch. "We know the odds, Admiral. We've known them for 200 years. Withdraw now or learn why the galaxy was wise to fear us." "All ships," Thorx commanded, his voice rising. "Target those vessels. Prepare to fire on my mark." A Krillian destroyer, eager to prove itself, fired early. A massive plasma lance, hot enough to melt through any known armor, streaked toward the nearest human ship. Every sensor tracked it, waiting for the flash of the kill. The human vessel simply wasn't there anymore. It moved with impossible speed, like it had known the shot was coming before it was fired. The plasma lance hit nothing but empty space. The return fire was worse. A beam of white energy, focused and precise, cut through the destroyer's shields like they were made of smoke. The beam sliced the ship perfectly in half through the middle, and both pieces tumbled away, trailing fire and bodies. "All ships, engage," Thorx roared. "Fire everything." What followed wasn't a battle. It was a lesson in just how far humanity had come in 200 years of hiding and building in the dark. The human ships moved like they were alive, their artificial intelligence systems predicting enemy fire before it happened. They dodged, weaved, spun through space in patterns that should have been impossible. Their weapons reached out with terrible accuracy, cutting through shields that had never been breached before. But it was more than just technology. It was the way they fought. A human frigate, its engines damaged and hull bleeding air, didn't try to retreat. Instead, it accelerated directly at a council carrier, ramming into it at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also took out 3 nearby cruisers that were too close. "They're insane," a Zephian captain screamed over the command network. "They're actually trying to die." Commander Lisa Hayes, coordinating the battle from the Valiant's tactical station, heard the transmission and smiled coldly. "No," she said quietly to herself. "We're trying to win." There's a difference. Another human ship, the Defiant, found itself surrounded by a dozen enemy vessels. Its captain, a man named Greg Stone, evaluated his options in the 3 seconds he had. Retreat was impossible. Surrender was unthinkable. So he did what humans had learned to do in 200 years of preparation. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered. 30 seconds. The crew rushed to escape pods, launching them in all directions. The enemy ships, confused by the sudden retreat, hesitated. That hesitation cost them everything. Greg stayed on the bridge alone, his hands moving across controls with practiced ease. He disabled every safety system, overrode every failsafe, and pushed the reactor past its limits. When it reached critical mass, he transmitted one last message. "Earth remembers." The explosion lit up the battle space like a newborn star. When the light faded, the Defiant was gone, along with all 12 ships that had surrounded it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it finally ended, 73 council ships were limping away into hyperspace, their crews traumatized and their admiral dead. Admiral Thorx had gone down with his flagship when a human torpedo breached its reactor. The human fleet had lost 2 ships completely and suffered damage to 5 others. But they had won, and won decisively. As the surviving council ships fled, Jake Morrison broadcast a message on all frequencies, one that would be heard on every council world within hours. "You tried to exterminate us once. You failed. We went into the dark, we survived, and we rebuilt. Now we're back and we want answers. Every species that participated in the attack on our colony ships will stand trial. Every leader who gave the orders will face justice. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. You have 2 choices. Give us justice willingly or we will come and take it. You have 1 week to decide." On Earth, hidden behind its shields for 2 centuries, billions of humans watched the broadcast. They saw their ships fighting, saw them winning, saw them demanding the justice that had been denied for so long. In cities built deep underground, in habitats floating in dark oceans, in stations hidden in asteroid fields, people cried and cheered and held each other. For 200 years, they had lived in fear, always hiding, always waiting for the day the council might find them and finish what they started. Now for the first time they were the ones making demands. They were the ones the galaxy feared. In the wreckage of the battle, among the floating debris and bodies, the human ships began rescue operations. They pulled survivors from both sides out of the dark, treated their wounds, and kept them alive. Because even in victory, even in anger, humans remembered what it meant to be civilized. Kate Fisher stood beside Jake on the bridge, watching the rescue operations on her screens. "What if they don't give us justice?" she asked quietly. "What if they refuse?" Jake looked at the stars beyond the viewport, at the vast galaxy that had tried to erase his people from existence. "Then we remind them that Earth doesn't just endure," he said. "Earth fights back, and we never ever forget." The footage from the Battle of the Silent Zone played on every screen across the galaxy. News networks showed it continuously. In homes and bars, on ships and stations, billions of beings watched the impossible happen. 8 human ships had defeated 300 council vessels, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency council session began within hours of the battle's end. The Grand Chamber was packed, not just with the official representatives, but with military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and advisors. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension and fear. "We should have destroyed them all 200 years ago," Commander Vex Thor hissed, his previous amusement replaced with cold fury. "Our ancestors were fools to leave survivors." Ambassador Kelnara's body flashed bright red, a Zephian sign of anger. "Then perhaps you should explain to this council exactly what happened 2 centuries ago, Commander. Because according to our official records, that sector was always empty. According to our histories, humanity never existed. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Species that had sat together for centuries suddenly couldn't meet each other's eyes." An old Telvanni counselor named Seknor rose slowly from his seat. He was ancient even by Telvanni standards, his skin wrinkled and his movements careful. He had served on the council longer than most species had known space travel. "I was there," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying across the chamber. "Not at the battles, but in the meetings that followed. I was young then, a junior aide barely allowed in the room. But I remember." He activated a control and holographic files appeared in the air above the chamber floor. They were marked with the highest security seals locked away for 200 years. "Humanity appeared in our galaxy without warning," Seknor continued. "They developed space travel on their own, with no contact with the Council. Their technology was different from ours, evolved along different lines. They didn't follow our rules because they didn't know our rules existed." He pulled up images of human ships, old designs that looked nothing like the sleek warships that had just won the battle. These were exploration vessels, colony ships, science platforms. "Peaceful ships, they expanded quickly," Seknor said. "Too quickly for the Council's comfort. They claimed systems we had designated for member species. They refused to acknowledge Council authority because they had built their civilization without us. They were independent, strong, and growing stronger every year. So we killed them," a voice said from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was a human woman in a military uniform. She walked forward without permission, without escort, without fear. Her name tag read Fisher, and her rank showed lieutenant. "How did you get in here?" Vex Thor demanded. "Guards, remove this human immediately." But Kelnara held up a tentacle. "Wait, let her speak." "We gave them 1 week. We should at least listen to what they have to say." Kate Fisher walked to the center of the chamber, and suddenly the holographic files Seknor had opened began to expand. More documents appeared, more images, more data. The Council's security systems hadn't detected her doing anything, but somehow she had accessed files that should have been impossible to reach. "You sent fleets to destroy our colony ships," Kate said, her voice clear and strong. "Ships full of civilians, families, children. You didn't warn them, didn't try to negotiate, didn't offer any chance for peace. You just killed them." The chamber's screens began showing footage that made several species representatives turn away in shame. Human colony ships under attack, burning, breaking apart. Escape pods being deliberately targeted. Distress calls being ignored. "We found the wreckage," Kate continued. "We recovered the data cores. We have the names of every ship you destroyed, every person you killed. 37 colony expeditions. Over 200,000 people gone." Vex Thor stood, his voice rising. "They were invading our territory. They refused to submit to Council law. We had every right to defend ourselves." "They were explorers," Kate shot back. "They were looking for new homes. They had no weapons. They posed no threat. You committed genocide, Commander. And then you covered it up. She gestured, and more files appeared. These ones showed the cover-up, the falsified reports, the decisions to classify everything and pretend humanity had never existed. 20 ships escaped, Kate said quietly. 20 ships out of 57. They made it back to Earth and warned our homeworld what had happened. Our people made a choice then. We could try to fight you, all of you, with our primitive technology and small fleet. Or we could hide. We could disappear and use the time to prepare. She pulled up an image of Earth, surrounded by massive shield generators that made the entire star system invisible to sensors. We built shields around our sun. We made Earth disappear from your maps, and we spent 200 years building, training, preparing for the day you might find us. Every human child learned what you did to us. Every factory had one purpose. Every shipyard, every research station, every military academy. We prepared for this moment. Captain Jake Morrison appeared in the chamber then, his holographic form transmitted from the Valiant. He stood beside Kate, and together they faced the council that had tried to erase their species. We could have struck at any time in the last 50 years, Jake said. Our agents have been living among you, looking like you, working beside you. We had people in your governments, your militaries, your corporations. We could have sabotaged your infrastructure, assassinated your leaders, poisoned your food supplies. We had 1,000 opportunities for revenge. He paused, letting that sink in. Species around the chamber were looking at each other with new suspicion, wondering which of their colleagues might be human in disguise. But we didn't, Jake continued, because revenge isn't justice. We waited, we gathered evidence, and we built our case. Now we're presenting it to you. The Krillian Empire planned and executed the genocide. We want their leadership to stand trial. We want the truth in every history book. We want our people to come home without fear. And we want a seat at this council with full rights so we can make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Never, Vexthor roared. Humanity will submit to council authority or be destroyed. We will rally every species, every fleet, and burn your precious Earth to cinders this time. Jake's expression didn't change. You're welcome to try. But first you should probably know something. Kate began entering commands on a device in her hand. Across council space, on hundreds of worlds and thousands of systems, things began to happen simultaneously. Information flooded public networks. The true history of first contact with humanity, the genocide, the cover-up, names of those responsible, everything. But that was just the start. Financial systems crashed as hidden code activated, freezing the accounts of those who had participated in the attacks. Trade routes were disrupted as ships found their navigation systems mysteriously malfunctioning. Defense networks went offline, their security compromised by programs that had been waiting, dormant, for decades. We've been among you for 50 years, Kate explained as chaos erupted across the galaxy. We look like you when we want to, sound like you, think like you, and we've been very, very patient. Every station, every planet, every fleet has human agents embedded in it. We could have struck at any time, but we waited. She looked around the chamber at the representatives who were receiving emergency messages from their homeworlds, all reporting the same thing. Systems failing, secrets revealed, order collapsing. We're not monsters, Kate said. We're not here to conquer or destroy. We just want justice. Give it to us willingly. And we'll help you fix everything we just broke. Refuse and we'll show you just how creative 200 years of preparation can make a species. You have 1 week to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the council in chaos. Some species demanded immediate surrender to human demands. Others wanted to fight, to rally their fleets and show humanity that the council wouldn't be blackmailed. A few wise ones simply sat quietly, thinking about what it meant that humans had been living among them for half a century without anyone noticing. On Earth, the shields began to lower for the first time in 200 years. It was a gesture of good faith, Jake explained in another transmission. Humanity was willing to be vulnerable, to show they wanted peace. But the warships remained ready, and everyone knew that if the Council chose war, Earth would fight. In the Krillian Empire, civil war erupted within hours. Citizens who learned the truth about the genocide demanded accountability. Military officers who had followed orders 2 centuries ago were dragged from their homes. The government collapsed as different factions fought for control. Ambassador. Kelnara watched it all from the council chambers and felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Shame. The council had claimed to represent civilization, peace, and order. But they had committed genocide and covered it up. They had created the very threat they now feared. She began drafting a proposal, one that would split the council and reshape the galaxy. It was time for truth, even if the truth was ugly. It was time for justice, even if justice hurt. The week that followed nearly destroyed the Galactic Council. Species that had worked together for thousands of years turned on each other. Old alliances crumbled as secrets came to light. Some governments fell completely, replaced by new leaders who promised transparency and justice. The Krillian Empire suffered the worst. Their capital world burned with riots as citizens demanded answers. Military commanders who had thought themselves heroes learned they were war criminals. The Emperor himself was dragged from his palace and held for trial. The once proud empire fractured into a dozen smaller states, each claiming to represent the true Krillian people. But it was a message from an unexpected source that finally brought calm to the chaos. The eldest had been part of the galaxy for longer than anyone could remember. They were the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel, the ones who had helped form the Council in its earliest days. They rarely spoke, rarely interfered, content to watch younger species make their own mistakes. But now they broke their silence. Their ship appeared above the Council homeworld without warning, a massive vessel older than some stars. From it came a transmission that reached every inhabited world simultaneously. "We are the eldest," the message began, translated into every known language. "We have watched this galaxy grow for 10,000 years. We have seen species rise and fall. We have witnessed wonders and horrors, and we carry a great shame." The being who appeared on screens across the galaxy was ancient beyond measure. Its form was difficult to look at directly, as if it existed in more dimensions than the eye could process. It spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word carried immense weight. "We remember humans," it said. "We were young when they first reached for the stars, though still older than they could imagine. We saw in humanity something that frightened us. They were aggressive, expansionist, difficult to control. They reminded us of our own violent past, of the mistakes we had made when we were young. When the Council moved against humanity, we did not intervene. We watched the genocide happen and did nothing to stop it. We told ourselves it was necessary, that humanity would have brought chaos to the galaxy. But we were wrong. We were afraid, and we let fear guide us to commit a terrible crime." The eldest's form seemed to shift, showing something that might have been sorrow. "Captain Morrison, Lieutenant Fisher, and all the people of Earth, you have every right to demand blood for blood. You could burn this galaxy in revenge, and many would say you were justified. But we ask you to consider what kind of civilization you want to build. One founded on vengeance and pain, or one that breaks the cycle of violence we have all been trapped in." Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the transmission with his senior staff around him. Kate was there, along with Lisa Hayes and the other ship commanders via hologram. They had all seen the message, and now they had to decide how to respond. "They're trying to appeal to our better nature," Lisa said quietly, "asking us to be merciful when they showed us none." "They're asking us to be better than they were," Kate corrected. "That's different." Jake was silent for a long moment, thinking. He thought about the wreckage they had found, the recordings of people dying and screaming. He thought about 200 years of hiding, of children growing up in underground cities never seeing the sun. He thought about the rage that burned in every human heart, the desire for revenge that they had all carried for so long. But he also thought about what came after revenge. If they burned the galaxy, if they made every species pay for what the Krillian Empire had done, what would be left? Would Earth rule over ashes and bones? Would humanity become the very thing they hated? "Open a channel," he said finally. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." When the channel opened, Jake spoke clearly and firmly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison speaking for Earth and humanity. We have heard the eldest. We have heard the Council's various responses to our demands, and we have made our decision." He paused, and across the galaxy, billions of beings held their breath. "We want the truth told. Every history book, every school, every public record must acknowledge what happened to humanity. The genocide must be named and remembered. We want the Krillian leaders who ordered the attacks to stand trial before a tribunal. That includes human judges. We want reparations paid to the families of the victims, and we want recognition of Earth as a sovereign power with a full seat on the Galactic Council. But, and here Jake's voice became harder, we will not seek revenge beyond justice. We will not punish the children for the sins of their grandparents. We will not burn worlds that had nothing to do with the attacks. If the Council agrees to our terms, humanity will help rebuild what we broke in the last week. We will share our technology, our knowledge, our perspective. We will be partners in building something better." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "However, if the Council refuses, if they choose to fight rather than face the truth, then we will show them exactly what 200 years of preparation means. We will not hold back. We will not show mercy. The choice is yours." The vote, when it came 3 days later, was not unanimous. 12 species voted against the human demands, claiming they set a dangerous precedent, but 35 voted yes, and that was enough. The Treaty of Remembrance was signed on Earth, the first time most alien species had ever set foot on the human homeworld. They stood in a great hall built especially for the occasion, beneath a sky that humanity had hidden for 2 centuries. The trials began a month later. Krillian officials, military commanders, and political leaders stood before a tribunal of judges from a dozen species, including 3 humans. The proceedings were broadcast live across the galaxy, every word translated and recorded for history. Some of the accused claimed they were following orders. Some said they truly believed humanity was a threat. Some showed remorse. Others remained defiant to the end. But all of them faced justice, and that meant something. The reparations were substantial. The Krillian successor states paid in technology, resources, and territory. Human colonies, long planned but never built, began to rise on worlds that had been promised to other species. It hurt, and it was supposed to hurt. Justice wasn't comfortable, but the real change was quieter and deeper. Human ships began appearing in Council space, not as conquerors, but as traders, explorers, and diplomats. Human students attended alien universities. Alien students came to Earth. A year after the battle, Kate Fisher stood on an observation deck of humanity's first official embassy station, watching ships from across the galaxy dock and depart. Beside her, Dan Cole, the agent who had made first contact on Epsilon 7, drank coffee from a container that alien visitors found endlessly fascinating. "Think it'll last?" Dan asked. "The peace, I mean." Kate watched a human child playing with a young Zephian in the station's garden. Both were laughing, running, being kids. The Zephian's parent watched nervously, probably remembering that Zephians had participated in the attacks 200 years ago. But the human parent just smiled and waved, encouraging the children to play. "Maybe not forever," Kate said. "Species will always have conflicts. We'll argue about borders and resources and whose turn it is to host the Council Summit. But we gave peace a real chance. That's more than our ancestors had." On Earth, the shields were fully down for the first time since they had been built. The planet was visible to the galaxy again, its blue oceans and white clouds a sight that brought tourists from 1,000 worlds. In the capital city, the Museum of Remembrance stood at the center of town, its walls carved with the names of every person who had died in the genocide. Humans visited it to remember. Aliens visited it to learn, and slowly, painfully, understanding began to grow. Jake Morrison retired from active duty 6 months after the treaty was signed. He was offered a position as Earth's ambassador to the Council, but he turned it down. He had done his part. It was time for others to build the future. He moved to a small colony on the edge of human space, a world with wide oceans and clean air. Sometimes tourists recognized him and asked for his story. He always told them the same thing. We were called a myth. We were almost erased from existence. But we survived because we refused to give up, refused to be forgotten. And when we came back with a choice. We could be the monsters they feared, or we could be something better. We chose better. I hope you'll do the same. The galaxy changed in those years following first contact. The Council became more transparent, more accountable. New species were welcomed with caution and respect rather than dismissal. The old attitudes of superiority began to fade, replaced by a recognition that every species had something to offer. And humanity, the species that had almost been lost to time, became known for something new. Not just as warriors or survivors, but as the people who had every reason for revenge and chose justice instead. The people who had suffered greatly and still chose to build rather than destroy. In bars across the galaxy, old traders still told stories about humans. But now they weren't myths or legends. They were history, real and documented. And when young beings asked if humans were dangerous, the old traders would nod slowly. Dangerous? Yes, but also fair, also brave, also kind when they don't have to be. The humans burned the sky with their warships when they returned.